And welcome back to Newsmax Prime. I'm Miranda Kahn in tonight for Hayworth. Should we stay or should we go? Well, it's not just a popular song from the British band The Clash. It's what Brits will consider tomorrow when they vote on whether to stay or Brexit, as it's been referred to, from the European Union.
Go out and vote Remain for a bigger, better Britain.
British leaders traveled the island today pushing for and against Britain leaving the EU.
I want us tomorrow to vote for Britain to become independent.
Right now, the numbers are split down the middle, meaning the decision could come down to the remaining 9% who haven't made up their minds.
It will be a big moment for democracy in this country.
Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome.
The two main issues driving Brexit are immigration and the economy.
We're better if we do it together.
The City of London, the International Monetary Fund, and several businesses want the country to stay over fears that leaving would plunge Britain into a recession, costing the country jobs. But other pro-Brexit leaders say London must regain control of its own destiny because Brussels, the de facto capital of the EU, has too much power.
Brussels runs our lives. 60% of the law of our country coming from Brussels. Our entire fisheries controlled by Brussels.
And Britain's growing nationalism runs parallel to what we're seeing here at home with the rise of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. The Brexit vote takes place tomorrow, 1 week after the murder of British lawmaker Jo Cox, who wanted her country to stay in the EU. Police say she was killed by a man who apparently yelled "Britain first" during the attack, highlighting the deep divide within that country. For much more on this story, we are pleased to be joined by András Simonyi. András is a managing director at the Center for the Transatlantic Relations at the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University. He was also the former Hungarian ambassador to the United States from 2002 until 2007. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newsmax Prime. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
András, as we mentioned earlier, most polls show a virtual dead heat on this contentious issue of the Brexit. This one that you can see is from YouGov for the Times newspaper. It found 51% would vote to stay and 49% would vote to go. Some Betty sites, though, are saying that 70% are saying that Britain will stay within the EU. How concerned are you that Britain could leave the EU?
I'm very concerned, and the bottom line is this is an emotional election, and I also agree with your comment that this is basically this is a vote about the elites. This is the disenchanted Brits who do not want the elites and are disappointed with the elites. So I'm very concerned, and this could be the single most important geopolitical event for decades, and which will harm us all, harm the transatlantic relations. It will weaken Europe, and it will weaken the most important that the United States has. So lots at stake.
Now, when you say it will weaken the United States, what do you mean by that? Politically or economically?
I think I would put it in a geostrategic context. I think a weaker Europe is a weaker partner, both economically and strategically for the United States. Don't forget that the United States and Europe need to hold hands as partners, as allies, to fix problems in the world, and a weaker Europe will be a weaker partner.
Now, presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump weighed in on the Brexit debate. Listen, and we want to get your reaction.
Personally, I wouldn't do it. I mean, a lot of the migration and a lot of the acceptance of people is because of the European Union. I think that's been a disaster.
So you would prefer Britain personally to pull out?
Me, I have no preference. I have big investments in Britain, but I have no preference. I think if I were from Britain, I would probably not want it. I'd want to go back to a different system.
So there you hear it. You heard Donald Trump saying that if he were in Britain, that he would be probably for a Brexit, very different from what we're hearing from President Obama. If the Brits leave, could we see new efforts in many other countries to do the same? In other words, will we see a ripple effect?
Well, this could be contagious, but let me also say that it could have unforeseen consequences for Britain as well. Britain might very easily disintegrate, and there is a danger to look at Brexit only from the angle of the migration policies, which are obviously a problem. I don't think Europe has handled it very well, but that's only one segment of the problem we're talking about.
Jim joins us from Newcastle, Ohio. Jim, thanks so much for joining us here on Newsmax Prime. What's your question or comment?
I was really wanting to comment on Hillary. I'll give you one thing on the British thing there. Just not being a British citizen, I don't think I have any right to comment on that. But I listened to both Trump's and Hillary's speeches today, and I think it's outrageous the way CNN treated Trump. Immediately, almost immediately anyway, after his speech, they started banging it and saying they were going to fact check it and all that stuff. After Hillary's speech, the first thing they did was to go to that charade going on in Congress, in the House there, and let two Democrats say what they had to say about it. And of course, the only way you get a compromise with the Democrats is to give in all your side and accept theirs, and if it fails, then it's the Republicans' fault. Then when Hillary finished her, after they got through talking about the charade, they went back to Trump, and Hillary said, well, we got to fact check both of those, but they went right into Trump again.
Right.
And I didn't stay on long enough to hear what they had to say about Hillary.
And that's why you're watching Newsmax right now. Jim, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate your comments. András, want to get your thoughts. Who do you think will have a better relationship with the UK? Do you think it will be Donald Trump? We know that Parliament has actually held votes on whether or not to allow Donald Trump into that country. Do you think he would better or help that relationship with our strongest ally, with the UK, or do you think Hillary Clinton will?
Well, once a diplomat, always a diplomat. Let me say this. The Europeans will have to work with the American president, the American people choose to elect. And it will be up to the wisdom of the given president to make sure that this relationship stays strong. I know there are a lot of people out there that a European should take a stance. My advice has always been, the last year and a half, to European leaders: don't comment on the American elections, because you might not get the person you want. It doesn't mean that I don't have a very strong view, but I think at this point it's better to keep it to myself.
All right, so if you're a betting man, spoken like a true diplomat right there, but if you were a betting man, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow? The polls close at 5 o'clock. Yes or no? Are we going to see a Brexit?
I don't think so.
All right. András Simonyi, thanks so much for joining us. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you.